Twin get up in her, so the audio and stuff like that is correct. Got a very juicy message, man, for y'all today on, you know, Ephesians 6:12. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, right, but spirits and principalities. I'm about to go to explain to y'all exactly what Ephesians 6:12 means without the fear. I got one like in the chat. Is my twin up in here? Is the audio cool? You know, if so, we can dive right in. All right, twin, you in the chat? Today, January 2nd, second day of 2026, man, and you know, your boy's feeling pretty good, right? you know, shit, just make sure y'all like, subscribe, for your boy. And if twin, if you can hear me, just put a I can hear you up in the chat. So we can go ahead and get into this lecture, man. I'll be patient. Patience is a virtue, so you gotta work on that for sure. But no, twin, if you are in the chat, if you did join, right, let me know that you can hear me so I can get this lecture started. I am in the library, by the way. You know, just somewhere, a lot more quieter than, what I'm used to. So, I have to speak lowly or have to speak, with my inside voice, right? Still didn't tell me if he could hear me yet. 1 second. All right. I just sent. Oh snap! What's the word? Jesus and God to heaven. What's the word, y'all? Brody. What's the word? Appreciate y'all. Thank you. I'm actually about to get ready to be explaining some of the words. So if y'all can hear me, just say that y'all can hear me. If y'all can hear me, just say y'all can hear me. All right. You changed your name. Yeah. I mean, not necessarily. I just adopted the full name, right? Because I call myself a magi, right? But then, you know, it's imagination, right? But basically, I'm just waiting for my twin to get up in the chat so he can confirm to me if he can hear me or not. Can y'all hear me? We got 11 people up in the chat, man. I want to get this lecture started. I just want y'all to know. I just want y'all to give me a thumbs up in the chat if y'all can hear me. All right. But today's topic is we wrestle not with flesh and blood. The Bible explained without fear, right? So, yeah. How y'all doing today, man? It's the second day of January, right? You know, we coming in strong, man, right? We in the playoffs right now, type shit, right? This is the playoffs, right? It meant nothing if you went all those. It meant nothing if you won all those other battles, right? But when you get to the playoffs, that's when you really wanna, you know, put your all in this shit, right? So this is, my playoffs, right? This is the extra innings. Yeah, no, the extra innings, no, for sure. But dang, you're popular. Am I really popular? I don't feel popular. I feel very unknown, right? But I mean, that's just me, I guess, right? My, what is this man doing? All right, Jesus and God to heaven, can you hear me? Just, just say that I can hear you, and we can get this ball rolling, right? Because I literally text my moderator before I started this live and said I'm gonna go live. Just be in there and make sure you can hear me. And this man is just late, so you know I have to just be patient, I guess. Okay, thank you. Oh my God, thank you so much, Jesus. All right. All right, so basically today's topic, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, the Bible explained without fear. So I'm about to be explaining to y'all Ephesians 6:12, pretty much every dimension of it, right? From the verse all the way to, the hidden meanings that they don't necessarily want us to, incorporate into our daily lives, because of course we know that the system that we live in wants us to live in fear. But basically, Ephesians 6:12 explains, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." So let's start off with the verse, "We wrestle not with flesh and blood," right? So we know that our bodies, of course, are flesh and blood, right? And oftentimes we think that, when we're arguing with, my bad. We oftentimes think that when we're arguing with someone, when we're fighting with someone, right, or when we're having a, quarrel with someone, that we are, challenging the enemy from its core essence, which is essentially not true, right? So basically, your real struggle is not people. So it's not your enemies, it's not corrupt leaders, it's not family members, and it's not those who hurt you. So these would be examples of people in the flesh that a lot of people would think, oh, they hurt me, so I'm about to go attack them. The Bible does not want us to look at it like this, right? The Bible is saying that people are often vessels, not the source, right? The Bible is often saying that people are vessels, right, of this energy, right? Not the source of the energy, right? So people are often vessels of love, not the source of love. People are vessels of envy and jealousy, but they are not the source of, envy and jealousy, right? So basically, Jesus reinforces this when he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not of what they do," right? So the fight isn't physical violence or revenge, it's discernment. It's more so having a discerning spirit and being able to discern, you know, the enemy, right? The corrupt family member, right? Or the ones that hurt you, from the actual source of the one that wants to see your demise, which is essentially the devil, right? So let me backtrack a little again. The Bible is saying people are often vessels, not the source, right? Jesus reinforces this when he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," right? Because even Jesus knew that, you know, they will attack each other, they will go at each other. Can you explain that a bit more? Which part? Which part? I actually like questions too, and I actually like when y'all actually able to communicate with me like this, right? Because this is essentially conversation. Have you watched Young David yet? No, I haven't watched David yet. But basically, we wrestle not with flesh and blood, right? Meaning that your struggle is not with the people. It's not the enemies. It's not the corrupt leaders, right? It's not the people who hurt you. It's kind of really simple, right? The Bible is saying that people are often vessels, not the source, right, of why we want to attack them. They are not the source of our problems. They are simply a, vessel of it. Like, we can be used by God, but we can also be used by the devil as well, right? So basically, Jesus reinforces this when he says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do," right? When they attacked Jesus, when they killed Jesus, right, they thought that they were attacking, you know, the core essence of God, but they weren't, right? And Jesus kind of wants us to know this, right? Because on the cross, he still, forgave us in a way, or he still forgave us. Now, point number two, we will be explaining principalities, right? So, what are the principalities, right, in the Bible? So, the Greek word for archi means ruling patterns, foundational systems, or governing orders. And again, the Greek word for archai, Archai, means ruling patterns, foundational systems, and governing orders, right? These are the principalities that in Ephesians 6:12 it says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, right? We wrestle with the ruling patterns, the foundational systems, and the governing orders. So in modern times, these are your ideologies, these are your systems of control, these are your cultural programming, right? These are like your economic, religious, political power structures, right? These are what principalities are, right? Thank you. No, go ahead, go ahead. So basically, in modern times, right, an archive would basically be an ideology, right? Think about all the ideologies that we have here in the 21st century, right? Think about all the systems of control that we have here in the 21st century, right? Think about the cultural programming, right? Some cultures, you know, go this way, some cultures go that way, right? Think about the economic, religious, and political power structures, right? So, principalities are systems that shape how people think and behave, not ghostly beings floating around. So, a lot of people would think that these principalities are ghostly figures, right? They would think that these principalities are spirits that, you know, control, right? But the Bible is not saying that, right? The Bible is saying that these principalities are the systems that shape how people think, behave, right, and feel. Next, we will be explaining what are the powers, right? Let's go back to Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. You know what principalities are? Principalities are basically your ruling patterns. They are your foundational systems. They are your governing orders. And in the 21st century, these are represented as your ideologies, your systems of control, your cultural programming, right, etc. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers. Now, what are these powers that they explain in Ephesians 12, right? So a lot of people would think that these powers are like, you know, are like beams of energy that come out of people's hands or beams of thought that come out of people's head, right? Not necessarily, right? The Greek word for exousia, I believe that I'm saying that right, but the Greek word for exousia means authority, it means influence, it means permission structures. And again, what are powers? The Greek word exousia means authority, it means influence, it means permission structures. These are the powers that we wrestle and fight against, right? These are social norms, laws, and psychological authority in the 21st century. So basically, these exousia, right? These exousia are today's time social norms, laws, psychological authority, right? Now, who is allowed to speak, live, or succeed, right? That is also another part of basically this exousia, right? There are social norms, laws, psychological authority, and who is allowed to speak, live, or succeed. These are the powers that be, right? The ones that have authority, the ones that have influence, the ones that have permission structures, right? The ones that are basically allowed to call who speaks, who lives, who succeed, etc., right? Power doesn't always look evil. It often, looks normal, right? It's like you're used to your mom and dad being the head of the household, right? When you're a baby, right? So when you turn 15, 16 years old and they ask you who's the head of your household, you're going to go to your mom, you're going to go to your dad, right? Because they are the law. They are the psychological authority. They are the social norms. They are the ones that who can say who is allowed to speak, live, or succeed. These are your powers. And let's read Ephesians 6:12 again, all the way up to powers. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, right? We know what principalities are. Against powers, right? And what's the other one? Against the rulers of darkness of this world. Now, what does the rulers of darkness imply in the Bible? So, darkness in the Bible doesn't mean monsters, right? It doesn't mean monsters. It means ignorance. It means deception. It means awareness or lack of awareness, right? The rulers of darkness represent ignorance. They represent deception and a lack of awareness, right? Jesus even, says in the Bible that light has come into the world, but men love darkness rather than light, right? Jesus is letting people know already that light has come into the world, but men loved, the ignorance. They loved the deception. They loved the lack of awareness, right? They loved this, more than the light itself. And we know that light represents truth. Light represents awareness, right? Light represents righteousness, right? So darkness equals not knowing truth. That's what darkness equals, not knowing truth, right? So in Ephesians, right, when we go to, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, the rulers of this darkness are the lies that govern society. They are fear-based belief systems. They are trauma-based down. They are trauma passed down generationally, right? These are the rulers of darkness, the lies that govern society, fear-based belief systems, trauma passed down generationally. And we know in the black community and in pretty much every community, right, we have RNA, right? We have trauma. We have past patterns that have been passed down through our RNA, which affect how we, move and shit like that psychologically, physically, and even emotionally sometimes, right? Well, I wouldn't even say physically. I say psychologically, mentally, and emotionally, right? Spiritual wickedness in high places. So, what is spiritual wickedness in high places, and how does Ephesians state this? For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this place, right? Against spiritual wickedness in high places. What is spiritual wickedness in high places? Spiritual wickedness in high places does not mean somewhere that is in the heaven or somewhere that is in the sky. That is not what spiritual wickedness in high places mean, right? High places in biblical times meant seats of power, right? High places in biblical times meant religious institutions. They meant the government. They meant cultural authority. So in the 21st century, let us look at, the people in the seats of power, or more so the seats of power, right? You have the House of Representatives. You have, almost, you have a government within every system. You have a government within this library. It may not look like it, but you have certain seats of power, right, in this library, because essentially that's what, spiritual wickedness in high places, in states, right? High places in biblical times meant seats of power, religious institutions, government, cultural authority. This should let y'all know who Jesus was really battling when he was here on this earth. He was not. He was talking about the government. He was talking about cultural authority. He was talking about religious institutions. He was talking about seats of power. That's what Jesus was talking about. This is a warning that corruption often lives at the top and not the bottom, right? So despite what they tell you, corruption lives at the top, right? Not the bottom, the one who has to say so. Let's go back to the powers, right? Authority, influence, right? Permission structure, right? These are today's social norms, laws, psychological authority, who is allowed to speak, live, or succeed. The ones calling those shots, right, have a seat in spiritual wickedness in high places because what? They are the cultural authority. They are the government, religious institutions. They are the seats of power. It's a warning that corruption often lives at the top, not the bottom. The ones who are at the top are the ones they call the shots, right? And people often have a debate in life, right, about how black people can't necessarily be racist because, in order to be racist or in order to show racism, you have to have a certain power over people. You have to have a certain amount of authority over a person. And of course, in the black community, we don't necessarily have that authority, but in the same way we do, right? The black community is infiltrated just like every other race and demographic on earth, right? Every race and demographic on earth is infiltrated with these, with these spirits of wickedness in high places, right? With the ones that have the seats of power, right? We're all being infiltrated just by them because everybody wants power. Everyone knows of a religious institution, a government, or cultural authority controlling your narratives, your beliefs, and what you're thinking, right? All right. So basically, let's read Ephesians 6:12 all together so we get the full story. Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, right? Against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So whenever you read this verse again, right, when you hear, for we wrestle not with flesh and blood, do not think about your enemies, right? Do not think about corrupt leaders or people, right? But think about the vessels that people are often used through, or think about the spirits that use these vessels, right? Because everything happens on the spiritual level, right? Everything happens on the spiritual level, then it trickles down to the physical, right? Which is actually the slowest vibrating, you know, dimension in a way, right? We know that you have liquids, solids, gases, or solids, liquids, gases. Solids being slow, liquids being, a little bit faster than, a solid, but then you have gas. Those particles are a lot faster, right? And a lot more spread apart, right? Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. These principalities are the ruling patterns, the foundational systems, right? The governing orders. Against the rulers of darkness of this world. We know that the rulers of darkness are the lies that govern society, right? The rulers of darkness are the fear-based belief system. The rulers of darkness are the narratives that keep people divided and asleep. Those are your rulers of darkness. And again, spiritual wickedness in high places. We know the spiritual wickedness in high places are the seats of power. They are the religious institutions. They are the government. They are the cultural authority, right? So basically, where's the core message of Ephesians 6:12? So basically, Paul is saying, stop fighting each other. Wake up to the invisible systems shaping behavior, fear, and division. Right? Paul is saying, stop fighting each other. Stop wrestling, with each other. Right? Wake up to the invisible systems shaping behavior, fear, and division. This aligns perfectly with Jesus' teachings, right? Which state truth sets you free, right? The kingdom is within, and renewal happens through the mind, right? So basically, after this core message, the Bible, kind of goes straight into, the armor of God, right? So basically, right after this verse, Paul talks about, the armor of God. He talks about truth. He talks about righteousness. He talks about peace. He talks about faith. He talks about salvation. And he talks about the word, which is the discernment. This, right now, we're diving into the word. We're discerning, right? We are learning together. More than me just teaching y'all this, we're learning together because I literally had to write this down physically. Now it's like I'm explaining it mentally. I'm mentally digesting this, and then spiritually, it would have its effects, right? So basically, Right after this verse, Paul talks about truth. He talks about righteousness, peace, faith, salvation, right? The word, which is discernment. Not weapons, not violence. Consciousness and character is what shapes and molds a person, right? So what is the final truth of Ephesians 6:12, right? So the Bible is not saying you're being attacked by unseen beings, right? Ephesians 6:12 is not saying you're being attacked by unseen beings. It is saying that you are living inside systems that profit from fear, ignorance, and division, and awakening is how you resist this, right? Let me read that one more time. You're being attacked. The Bible is not saying you're being attacked by unseen beings, right? Ephesians 6:12 is not saying you're being attacked by unseen beings. It is saying that you are living inside systems that profit from fear, ignorance, and division, and awakening is how you resist. That's why Jesus never fought Rome with swords, right? He dismantled them with lies, right? Well, not lies, but he dismantled lies with truth, right? See, Jesus wasn't the type to come in with swords and X, Y, and Z because Jesus even understood that, you know, it is not, the person. It is not you. It is not me. It is the vessel that the enemy, aka the devil, the demons are using, right? It is the vessel, right? Because we know that this world is not technically ours, though we did have dominion over it. This is the devil's playground, and people have to understand that shit. And yeah, that's pretty much Ephesians 6:12, right? And if y'all wanna, replay this video to help y'all, understand exactly what this meant, shit, feel free to do so. Feel free to like, subscribe for me too, right? And I made this video just as much for myself as I did just for the internet because, videos are timeless, right? You can always hop back on the video and, learn from it, right? You can learn from yourself, right? And this is essentially what I'm doing, right? But yeah, that was Ephesians 6:12. Shit, y'all be at peace though, Cosmic family, man. I say.